Today we are building this investment tracker app from scratch using Jetpack Compose. You will be able to track different types of investments like stocks, mutual funds, savings, or even livestock. You can add investments, edit them, or remove them. This is a full coding session with no cuts. You will see the real process, including debugging and fixing errors. By the end of this video, you will have a working app built using clean architecture and Hilt. The app will also be dynamically updated according to the dark theme or light theme. If we convert it to the dark theme, the app will be automatically changed to the dark theme, and if we remove the dark theme, it will be converted to the light theme. For now, we will use an in-memory database, and in the next videos we will upgrade it to a proper database and keep improving this app until we publish it on the Google Play Store. Let's get started. Let's take a look what we are building today from the design perspective. We will have this single home screen in which we will greet the user, and then we will have two cards. The total investment will be shown, and then number of investments will be shown in the other card, and then we will have a list of investments that the user can add, in which type of investment can be shown: stock, mutual fund, livestock, or savings. And then user can add a new investment from this plus icon, and a dialog box will appear in which investment name, investment type, amount invested, and date of the investment, and additional notes can be added from this add button, from this add dialog button, from this add dialog. There will not be another page because the UI will be as simple as possible. We will be focusing on the clean architecture part and making the app to obey the solid principle as much as possible. All right, so let's start by creating a new project. Create a new compose empty activity. Hit next, and then let's name this application as investment tracker. Hit finish. Let's remove this greetings, default greetings, and also remove this scaffold. So first of all, what we can do is basically let's check that whether we have let's convert it to the Android project view and go to the build gradle, and what we have is here. Let's check out the versions. So first of all, I would like to go to this build gradle live versions and check out the versions and update these versions to the latest ones, and also the compose bomb to the latest one. Sync now. So it will be synced now. Let's wait for the sync. So we will also add this. So we will create a new theme for this activity from the theme menu, and we will replace this. We will create a new material theme from the theme wizard from online website, and we will replace this theme from with that one, and we will make sure that app is usable in both light and dark modes. All right, so app is updated to the latest versions. Let's close this, and all right, so head over to the materialfoundation.github.io, and there you will find this material theme builder, and I would like to get the source image as bluish theme, like so. And hit next picture fonts, and font can be, let's say, let's take the default fonts as they are shown here, and export the theme. Export it for the Jetpack Compose theme. The theme will be downloaded, and all right. So when you extract the theme will be extracted, and in the UI there will be a folder theme, and then we in which we have color theme type, and simply we have to select all of these three files, and we have to copy and go back to the project and replace these three files with those ones. All right, with those ones, and we have to overwrite all of those. And now we can see that the color is replaced with this one, and just we have to go to this theme file and head over to the app theme, and we can replace this, may go to the main activity, and we have to copy this theme name and go back to theme and replace this composable with that theme name, so that the theme can be same as this one, and our error is gone. We can optimize the imports. All right, so the basic theming stuff is done now. All right, so next thing is we will start by creating clean architecture layers first. We will just create empty layers first. We will not add any files in those ones, because the layers will help us as soon as we will gradually improve our project and add a new files, and layers will help us which files are needed for those layers. So let's add a new layer, package, data, domain, and then we will have di for dependency injection, and then we have presentation, and now after creating these four layers, let's move this UI theme and main activity into the presentation, like so. Refactor this. All right, so this is in the theme. Let's remove this UI part. Let's make a new package for the screens, and in the screens we will have a new package for the home, like so. And in the home we will create a new file for the home screen. All right, so we will have a home screen here. All right, so let's make a composable for this home screen. Remove this modifier, close this project tab, and let's increase the font a bit. All right, let's add a preview so that we can see the home screen as soon as we will gradually add a design for this home screen. Let's add a scaffold first of all for this home screen. So for this home screen, in the scaffold we will be adding a modifier to get the full size, and then what we will have is basically it is giving us error because it is returning a padding which should be the child of this scaffold. So let's add a column for this, and modifier dot take the full parent size and padding, and also we have to give overall padding for this 16. Alright, let's wait for the build to finish and how it looks like now. They will be full screen. Alright, let's see, let's update it to show the system UI. Alright, the first thing is we want to add a greeting for the user. That will be a simple text. Text will be what's this error? Okay, so the error is what we are building here. So hello user. So we want to give it a style of the material theme, or material theme typography, and then we will give it a headline medium. Let's minimize this. Let's build a project from here and see. All right, that's good. We can now see the preview of the app, and the next thing is we want to show two cards here. So to show the two cards, we want to add a row here. Let's add a row. So the first thing in the row is card. Card will have a what? Card will have two things that is uh in the column. The first thing is the title for that. That will also be a text, and text for that is total investment, and the next is we want to show the value. All right, so as we can see, we now have to give the modifier padding styling for these column and card. So first of all, let's update the size of this font here. Let's give it a style. let's say material theme dot typography, and we want to give it a medium title like so, and for the color we want to give it from the material theme color scheme dot on primary container. All right, this looks good. And now we have to copy this style. This should be a little bit bigger from this title. All right, this can be title large. All right, so we want to give some padding in the column also. I think we can add a weight for the row. These are in the row, so we can add a weight in the card. But before going into that one, let's refactor this into a separate composable. And yes, we want to create it in the home screen. Let's say it is a dashboard item, and we want to make pass two things to this one: string title and value, also string. All right, and then value. This should be an error. Arguments, the first one is total investment, the other one is, let's say, 4,000. All right, so now we want to give we have to pass the modifier so that it can move it here. All right, we are passing the modifier from the upper function here. All right, let's add a modifier and give it a weight 1. That's good because it's only one item in this row, so weight will be taking the full width of the screen. We have to just copy and paste it here, and we can see there are two cards here, and we want to give some padding between these two. All right, so we can also add that we can add another modifier to give it an height of 100 dp. Let's say it's 100 dp, and we have to give some space between these two items, and we can add horizontal arrangement dot spaced by 10 dp, let's say, for example. That's good. And let's say, for example, it should be 16 dp, and we want to move this title and value in the center of this card. Let's change the color of these two cards. Card defaults, card colors, copy. This should be a container color. Container color should be material theme color scheme dot primary container. All right, that looks good. And in order to make this center aligned, we can add a box in this card. So let's add a box and move this up in the box like so. And this should be content. This should be content alignment, and alignment should be centered. All right. As we can see, that box is not taking the full size, so we can add a full size here, and boom, it's now showing in the centered of this text. And also we want to make this 4000 text aligned centered, so we can add horizontal alignment dot center horizontally like so. I think that's enough now for the dashboard item. Alright, so this greeting and this card should have some space. Let's add a space in this vertical, this card, right? Oh, so vertical arrangement dot spaced by, it should be 16 dp. That's good. Now after this row, we want to add some after this row we want to add a text for the title of this list, stocks list that we will be showing here, that will be my investments, and in bracket we have to show the size of those, and not equal, this should be style, we style, this should be material theme dot typography dot title medium like so. All right, create a list. To create a list, first of all, let's create a column here and add a new row item for this sorry, this stock item here. So let's say investment card, this should be a card. So in that card we have to show a column. In that column we are having a text of that is a type of investment. Let's say it is a stock, and style for this is typography dot label small. It should be small, and then we will be having a text of this should be name. Let's say for example this is Apple stock, and style should be material theme typography and title small. All right, what the other contents are, then we will be having a label for the invested, and then on the right side we have to show the value of that investment. So in order to show two items in a row, we have to add a row, obviously. Text is invested amount, style, material, theme, typography. Let's say it's a body. Let's copy and paste it here, and this should be amount. What it should be? It should be, say, title medium. It's good. Let's align this vertically. Vertical alignment dot center vertically. All right. All right. So for this card, let's give it max width. And also copy this modifier and give this modifier to this row also. What is the problem here? All right, got it. Row is taking the full width, but we have not aligned the items in this row, how these are horizontally arranged. So we can give it arrangement dot spaced between, like so. And for the, we have to give the padding overall for this column. Let's copy this modifier, padding of 16 dp. That looks good now. And for the colors of this card, copy container color. This should be material theme color scheme dot secondary container. It looks good, I think. All right, so between investment name and invested should have some space, right? How we can add? Let's add a spacer and give it a height of 10 dp. It's a simple investment card, and now what we can do is basically we can copy this card and refactor it into the investment card. All right. So now we have an investment card, and then when we will create a model for this investment, we can add a model to this as an item for that investment card and populate this item with these dynamically with this text, type, name of that investment, and then we will have the amount invested in that one to be shown here in the card. And then we will convert this into the lazy column to be shown smooth list of the investments shown here. All right, so the thing left here is floating action button in this one, in the scaffold. So it should have floating action button. Simple, it is floating action button. On click should be empty for now. And then we can add a text for that. Let's say it's a plus. Let's give a style. Material theme typography dot headline large, like so. When user clicks on this floating action button, a pop-up will be shown with the fields to be added as a new investment. All right, so the home screen is completed now. All right, so let's create a model for this investment. So first of all, we have to create an we have to create a model for this investment. So the fields will be the investment name and amount invested, and then we will be having a type of investment that we'll be having. So let's go to domain and create a new package model, and in that one create a new class. The class is investments, and this should be a data class. The first is id, this should be an integer. The other is type, this should be investment type. So let's add an add a new investment type as a model here, and I like to add a seal class for this investment type, and this should be a type of string. And simply we can add data object as that first type is stocks investment type, and the type is, this is basically stocks. Duplicate this a few times, and then the other one is mutual funds. I'm adding this string as a with underscore, is basically we want to add it in the database later on, so that's why I'm adding a underscore in this space. Instead of space, I'm adding underscore. So the third is livestock, that is a new thing in this investment tracker. And then we can have bonds, and lastly we can add other type of investment, like so. All right, let's go to investment and add this type. And the third thing is name as a string, and then we will be having amount, this should be double amount, like so. All right, let's go to home screen and complete the lazy column part of our listings. So as I have told you earlier, this should be an investment item. So this will be item dot type think we have done something here. Okay. For database, we will add later on another argument for the database value, or we can save same as this one. But first of all, we have to show it as space, mutual funds, and then livestock, bonds, and other type of investment. Let's go to home screen, investment type, and then it should have item name, and investment amount is this item dot amount. All right, so this is, let's convert this into a lazy column. Let's copy this, and we have to give this lazy column the remaining space that it have. For example, we can add a remaining space by fill max size. All right, so the other thing is we have to give, what we can do is basically now it should have items. So I like to add items indexed in this, so it should have an items that is a list of items that should be investment type, and the other argument that it takes is basically key. The first one is index, which is an integer. The other is item, which is basically investment. So it should be like so. This is okay. Remove this. All right, got it. All right, for the key, we can return it as item dot id, and like so. You can just copy this and paste it here, and we can see that error is gone now. And now for this row item of this lazy column, we have to use this card, and in the item we have to pass this item to this investment card. All right, so for example, let's add a list of investments. Investments, so first of all, id, investment type stocks, amount, let's add another, copy paste to this, should be dairy farm, and 3000. What is the problem here? Let's refresh this, and we have to use this investments, this list of investments in these items, and boom, we can, and yes, we can see the list of items populated in the lazy column. It's not looking good. What we can do is vertical arrangement. We can give some space between this. Let's add 10 dp space, like so. It looks good now. We can add as many items as we can, but all of these should have a unique IDs, because we have used that ID as a key for this indexing of this items list of this lazy column. And which you can also see here that in the render problem, it is showing us exception that key 2 was already used. This should be a unique key. All right, 4 5 6. As we can see that it is now populating properly. All right, so let's add a feature to add a new investment. When user clicks on this floating action button, a dialog box with the addition options to be shown in here. The fields to add investment, name of investment, type of investment will be shown right in the dialog. So let's show a dialog right here. This should be basically a dialog. So the dialog will be a composable dialog. Think I have imported a wrong dialog, that is from XML1. Yes. Let's remove and remove this one. Import it properly. We should have on dismiss request empty for now, and for this we want to show a card. The card should be filling the max width. And let's give a padding from the start, and also give the color as default card colors, copy containers, container color, material theme, color scheme, tertiary container color, and let's add a column. That's good. Colors also seems good now. Alright, let's hide this one. And the first is text to be add new investment, and style is, let's say, title medium. Add a new investment, and input type is outlined. Text field is this, and for this one, value is to be empty. On value change is also empty, like so. And for its label, you can also add a text, copy and paste this one text and change it to investment name, and add a star to this investment because it's a required type, and give this, let's say, body medium. All right, let's copy and paste couple of times. The second thing is investment type. Third is amount. Fourth is date, time. And then we can add some additional notes if we want to add. And last is we want to add a button on click, and for this button we can also add a text as add investment, and style of this button should be material theme, typography dot title medium. All right, so let's give some space between these fields. Vertical arrangement dot spaced by 10 dp, and horizontal alignment center horizontally. All right, when this floating action button will be clicked, this dialog box will be shown. All right, so let's add test here. Show add dialog by remember, and this should be mutable state of false. Import this operator set value, import also another operator, and we want to move this dialog in the if statement like so. By default the value is false, so the dialog is not showing currently. When we dismiss the dialog, or let's say when user clicks on this on click button, we have to make this or show add dialog false. And how we can enable it, we can make this enable in the floating action button. Now we have our investment model ready, but this is not enough for a real app. In a real scenario, we don't just store a single amount. We keep adding money over time, and sometimes there are some and sometimes there are expenses or withdrawals. So instead of storing everything inside the investment, we will create a separate model to track all of these actions. This is called a transaction. So let's create a model. Add a new model class in here. This will call transaction. This will be a data class. So let's add, first one is ID of this transaction. Second one is type. For this, we will create another sealed class for this transaction type. So this will be a transaction type of sealed class. All right. So this will be a type will be string here, and same as we have created for the investment type, we will create this. The first one is deposit. This deposit will be a transaction type. Let's say we have deposited something which is adding money, and next up we want to withdraw something. We withdraw some amount, and that will be withdraw. That amount will be subtracted or deducted from the total amount, and there will be some expenses also, like transaction fees or tax, any other transactions. So this will be an expense, like so. So this will be a transaction type. So each transaction belongs to an investment, and instead of passing an whole object, we are using investment ID. All right, so we will use investment ID, that is an ID of that investment, and then we will add an amount as double for this transaction, and then date for this transaction, that will be a string, and the description. All right, so let's check the models. We have transaction and we have investment. So instead of storing total amount in the investment, we will calculate it using the transactions. So let's remove amount from this double here, and this will reflect errors in our home screen, I guess so. That's the error. So let's remove it from here. Maybe in here also. Let's change it to hard coded one. All right. All right. So now that we have both models ready, we need a simple way to store data. For now, we are not using a database. We will create a simple in-memory storage using lists. So let's create an object to hold that data. So in the data layer, let's create data, and in the data layer we need to add source, and in that source package, that will be a local, and in that local package we need to add a new object. The object will be in memory database. That will be an object, like so. So this will have two lists of, the first one is investments, which is a mutable list of which is investment, and next up we have transactions, mutable list of, and this is a transaction. All right, this will act like our temporary database. Later we can replace this with a real database like room without changing much logic. Now let's add some sample data so that we can test the UI. Let's add a sample data. So let's create a public function here, add sample data. This will be an investment, and then we have investment object, and let's add the arguments. The first one is ID, and then we have an investment type, which is a stock, and then we have this one. Let's name this stock as Apple. And now let's add that in our in-memory database. Investments dot add this investment. All right. So now we need to add some transactions dot add. Let's create a list directly, and in that one we need to add transaction. Let's add a remaining thing. The first one is ID, and then we have transaction type. Let's add first one as deposit. Investment ID is 1, and the deposit amount is 5,000. Let's say, for example, this will be a double amount, and date, for example, 2026-01, and the description is, let's say it is an initial investment. And then we will add a couple of other transactions also. Let's say it is also a deposit. This will be 1000, and this is on 11th, and this will be, let's say it's a first of another month, the second month, and this will be a monthly investment. And then we have another transaction, that is the ID with the third one, and let's say it is an expense, and this is a transaction of 100. So this will be the deduction on the third month. So let's say, for example, our broker has taken the fees out of our stock, like so. All right. Now that we have one investment and multiple transactions linked to it, instead of storing total amount, we calculate it from transactions. Let's create a function to calculate the balance of that transaction. So let's calculate balance of that investment ID that is passed here, and that will return the balance of that investment. So it will return in memory database dot transactions, and then we have to filter out all the transactions that have as investment ID, that is passed as an investment ID. And then the return list, on the return list we have to make a sum of it, and we have to check if that sum, that is, if that type of transaction is let's say, for example, it is an deposit, so we want to add it. And if it is an expense, we have to add it, but it should be a negative one. And the withdrawal also, it should be a negative one also. So the negative will be deducted from the sum, and positive one will be added. It will return the calculated balance for the past investment ID. All right. let's say in the in the home screen, when we initialize our app, let's go to main activity and we have to call the home screen, and in before calling the set content we have to initialize the data, which is this function add sample data. So let's call this sample data from here and import that function. So it will populate the in-memory database, which is this in-memory database. And then in the home screen, what we can do is basically we can call in-memory database dot investments, and then for each investment we have to calculate the balance. So for that one we have to calculate the balance. We have to pass investment dot id. The balance of that investment is, remember, we have hard coded this value, so now we can replace it with this balance that we have passed here. So I think that is it for the initial app. Up till now this should work. This structure allows us to keep adding transactions every month, and the balance will stays accurate every time. Let's run this application and see what is the result. So let's start the emulator and run this application. When this application starts, this sample data will be populated in the memory database, and this should be reflected in this list of investment, that is our Apple stock, like so. That seems good. The stock is listed with the investment type and total amount is calculated. So let's say our total amount, what is the dry run of that amount is, the first deposit is 5,000, second one is 1,000, that is a total of 6,000, and the deduction of 100, that should be 5,900. So that's good. All right. So our our UI is working perfectly fine. So now we can add the remaining layers of our application, and that is, in the domain layer we have to add repository and the data sources. That is, we have already added in memory local data source, and but in that one we have to also add local data source, and we have to add the local data source as an abstraction layer in this. So let's add that. So but we also we have to add, in the presentation layer we have to add home screen with its states, actions, and then view model. All right. And also in the domain layer, we have to add the use case. To add the investment, get all the investments. All right. So now let's add a local data source, abstraction layer of local data source. So this will return a new model for this one. So let's make appearance of uncheck the compact middle packages so that we can see it in the hierarchy. All right, so in the local data source we have to add DTO for this database. So let's add a package for that one first. So local DTO. In this we have to add two DTOs. That is, the first one is investment. That is also a data class, but with the, let's say it is an entity. All right. And for this one, let's make split this window so that we can see what should be the columns for this entity. So let's say it is underscore integer, and then we have just don't make it an ID, and then we have to give it a type. So the type should be a string one for this, because in database we don't have investment type of data type. All right, so another thing is string here. All right, and for the transactions, let's add it here, and we have to add a transaction entity for that one also. ID is equal to int, and type is the same as string, and then investment ID, that is integer, and amount is double, and date is string, description is also string. All right, so after creating a DTO for the local data source, we have to create a mapper so that it can map transaction entity to the transaction for the domain. So let's create a mapper for this local one. Create a new package for this mapper. So in the mapper we have to add a new file that, let's say for example, it's a mappers. So the first one is transaction entity dot to transaction. This will return us a transaction like so. All right, let's specify all. The first one is ID as it is. I have so the DTO for the local data source should be a nullable one, because data sources can be nullable. we don't know how they are treated. Or let's say, and for the remaining parts we can also add nullable objects. For now we can add this, so it will throw us an error like so. Type, this is the important thing. So we have to add when type is we have to check if this is a transaction type dot expense dot type is this, then we have to return transaction dot expense like so. All right, for the remaining parts we can just copy and paste couple of times. And for this deposit, this will be a deposit, return the type of deposit, and then withdraw. And we also have to handle the null objects. All right, by default we can return transaction type is expense. All right, like so. And for the investment ID we can pass it like is this one, and amount is, else we will return 0. In this way the data will it will always be some transaction, either it will have empty values or correct amount, correct values, but it will never be the null object, it will never be null. All right, we have created a mapper for the transaction, and same one we have to create it for the investment entity dot to investment. Just bear with me and I will let you know when we will use this in the later video. All right, so we have to return investment. The first one is ID, default is 0. For the type we have to use same when type is this, and this one is name. And for this one we have to check if investment type is stocks dot type is stock, and let's add couple of times so that we can add this, and then we have bonds, and then we have other type of investment. Let's return it here, copy bonds, other, and the last thing is adding an else. By default we can return investment type dot stocks like so. All right, after creating a mapper for this investment entity, what we can do is basically we can create a local data source abstraction layer here. So let's create a new interface for this. This will be a local data source. So let's say this is a suspend function to get all the investments, and this will return the list of investment entities. Let's close this one, and for adding the investment we can add investment, and to add an investment we can pass either investment entity, or we can use directly the domain, but the best practice is to use the investment ID. But before that we have to create a mapper to map investment to investment entity. For now I am just using directly the investment, and we will create a mapper inside this add investment. All right, and for the same thing we have to add transaction, and this will be get transactions, and this will be a transaction entity because it is a local data source. It is in the data layer of this, so it will return the investment entity and its own type of model classes. All right, so now we have to create an implementation for this local data source. So let's create a new class here that is an in-memory data source, and this will be a class which implements the local data source. All right, so in this thing what we can do is basically when this is initialized, we can simply, when this is called, you can simply call the in-memory database object and add a new investment in that one. I think this is something wrong here. I don't know, but it feels something is wrong. This is a local database, but this is an investment. This should be investment entity for this local data source, right? Because we have to convert it to the entity and then pass it to the in-memory database. Right, I got it. All right. All right, we have to convert this investment into investment entities like so, and this one will be transaction entity, and this all will be changed now. This will be investment entity, like it's an investment dot id, then This is an investment dot type. It's not passed. Dot type. This is a string. Then we have investment dot name. All right, this is converted to investment entity, and for this transaction we have to convert it to the transaction entities. All right, and for the deposit we have to add a type to that is a string object. That's good to go now. It's giving us error again. What's the problem? All right, it's calculating the balance because it is returning entities, so the type is class type. What is this? Null safe. Now we can add basic and multiply it with -1. So, all right, so here sum of problem is all right. So for the calculate balance, we have to use this function from the presentation layer, and in the presentation layer what we can do is basically in the presentation layer we have domain models, not the entities. So let's convert this function to accept the transactions and accept the investment ID and then work on that one. So let's say it is a transactions list that it has a transaction from the domain. Let's remove it and make it as the previous one. All right, it's fixed now. All right, we have created an in-memory data source and we have investment here. Right, just as we did for this one, we have to replace it with this here. And for the get investments, now we have to return it like return, let's say for example, let's add a try catch here. Return in memory database, and then we have to return the mutable list of transactions dot to list. All right, So it will be an investment, not the transaction. We can convert it like investments also. And in the catch block, let's get all the exceptions here. And the most important thing you have to consider in here is you have to check for is cancellation exception from the coroutines, and then rethrow the exception. And after that we have to return empty list, and you can also log your error right here. Error in get investments. Alright, for the tag part we can add this is a class name here. Alright, so for the add transaction you can simply copy and paste it here, and this should be transactions, and this should be transaction entity, and in here we can call all the names, that is transaction dot id and transaction dot type, and then we have transaction dot investment id, and then we have transaction dot amount, and then we have transaction dot date, and then we have transaction dot description. Let's copy paste transactions, and all right, that's good to go. Now we have created local data source, and now we have to create a repository in which uh, the purpose of the repository is to convert data layer models into the domain layer models, right? So first of all, let's create a repository abstraction interface in the domain. But first of all, create a package for the repository. Create a new interface for repository. Let's say it is an investment repository interface. It will be a suspend function, add transaction. This will be transaction first of all, and then we have add investment. Here we can add investment, and then we have a suspend function to get all the transactions. And this is the cool part here, it will return list of transaction from the domain layer. All right, and now we have to get all the investments. This is an investment, and we have to create an implementation of this repository in the data layer. So let's create a package for the repository and create a new class, investment repository implementation, and extend it with investment repository. Implement all the members, and in the constructor of this repository we have to pass the local data source, which is interface of local data source. Simply we have to call local data source dot add transaction and pass this transaction here. For the investment we have to do the same, investment, like so. And now we can do is basically first it will get all the transactions from the data layer as an transaction entities, and then convert that into the domain layer. Let's say these are entities, local data source dot get transactions. All right, so as you can see these are list of transaction entities. All right, so remember we have created a mapper for this one here. Now it's time to use it. So now we can use it as transactions as entities dot map it dot to transaction, which is a mapper that we have just created in the mappers file, and it is now converted into the domain layer, and simply now we can return it as transactions, like so. And the same thing we have to do for the investments. We can simply copy here and paste and get investments, and this will be to investment. Let's change it as investments. Now we have created a repository and its implementation, which is now converting data layer models into the domain layer models. And now it's a time to create a use case in the domain layer. Let's create a package for the use case. Add a new use case to, let's name it as add investment use case. In this use case, what we can do is we can pass the repository, which is an investment repository interface. Make sure it is an interface from the domain layer. All right, let's create a function to execute this use case, and this will return us a flow. This will return us a flow that is a boolean type, either true or false. Alright, imported from kotlin x coroutines flow. Let's also use the flow extension function. All right, so in the execute it will be passed as an investment here, and this will this will do is repository dot add investment, and then we have to emit that after it is added we have to return emit the flow as true. Let's copy and paste this use case and change its name to add transaction use case. Change it as transaction. This will be add transaction, and the remaining part will be the same. And now let's add a use case to get investments use case. This will be private val repository. Let's create a function execute. This will return is the same flow, but it will return us a list of investments from the domain. And in the flow, and now we can use directly emit and then repository dot get investments, like so. Copy this function, sorry, copy this use case, paste here, and change this to get transactions use case. Change this to transaction and this get transactions, like so. Now that we have created the use case, now it's time to create a view model, and now it's time to create view model and the state actions for the home screen, and that is the MVI part, model view intent design pattern of this presentation layer. So let's look at the home screen, what we need for the states. Why we are getting the error here? All right, we're getting the error because we are using the investment from the domain layer, but in memory database is returning the investment and as an entity. That's why it is getting error. All right, it will be fixed when we use the state from the object. So first of all, we have to check in the state what we need in the state from the screen. The first thing is we need to show in the screen is total investment and the username, and what we need is number of investment. Let's change it to investments, how many investments are there. For example, we have 4 types of investments. All right, so investment, number of investments, and then list of all the investments we are getting here. And for the investment part, we have to use the calculate balance. All right. All right, for the calculate balance, remember we have changed its arguments to get the transactions, and now we have to get the transactions also in the state. So let's create a new class, data class for this state, that is home state. This will be a data class. So the first thing is basically that will be a username, that is a string type. By default it will be empty, and then we have total investment, that will be a double type, and by default it will be 0. And then we have number of investments, that will be an integer, that will also be 0. And then we have investments list, right? That will be investment list, and for now we can add simply empty list by default. And then we have transactions, as we have discussed why we need it, transaction, and then empty list. And we also need a flag for is loading, boolean is equal to false, like so. The home state is completed now, and we can now create a action that is performed by the user. So that will be a seed class. Let's see which type of actions user can perform. User can add a new investment from here, and then in the when we will use this dialog, we have to add this on value change and on add investment button. All right, for now we can just use the on add this floating action button type. Let's say it is a data object on add a new investment clicked. This is a home action. All right, and now we have to create a view model for this home. Let's create it home view model, extend it with view model. All right, first of all we have to give the state of, we have to initialize the state here. So this will be state, that is a mutable state which is home state type, and initialize it. Let's import this mutable state. sorry, it should be mutable flow, state flow. For the home state, to initialize it, we have to pass the home state and initialize it with the value, with the construction home state constructor. And then we have to use state, immutable state, and then this will be state flow and type of home state, and we have to pass our state here. Remove this. All right, let's make it a private. All right, for the action, I like to use only one function and expose it publicly without using other actions because it's easier to manage, like so. On action, so let's say it's handle action, and this will be action, home action, and then we can add is when statement with this, like so. When add a new investment is clicked, what we can do is basically add a new investment. So now go back to the home screen and check, and we have to add state and action in the home screen here. But before that, we have to initialize it with the in initialize the view model in the main activity. Like so. All right, we have initialized the view model, and now we have to pass the state to this home screen and its action. So let's get the state, well, state by, and get it from the view model. Let's change it to by dot state dot collect as a state with the life cycle. Import the operator, import the operator, and what we can do is basically pass the state and pass view model handle action like this. And now we have to use the IDE shortcut add parameters to function home screen, and in this way we can use this on action shorthand lambda. And what we can do is we have to give the default value so that our preview can work as it was working previously. And in this way we can give the default value to this lambda as curly braces. All right, so we can now remove this investments from here and pass investments from state dot investments, and see, the error is gone now, as I have told you. So the first parameter is investment ID. The second one is we have to also pass either we can use the balance here, or let's say let's move this function from this card in this outer one so that we can use the transactions directly. All right, and now we can pass balance to this function. Add a parameter to the function, yes, balance, and we can use it as it is, that is passed to this investment card. All right, we have added the view model, we have added home state, we have added home action, and we have updated the home screen with the state and action flows, and we have left with this also. So the total investment is, this will be state dot total investment, and this will be number of investments, number of investments dot toString. All right, and this will also be same as this one, or we can simply use state dot investment dot size. This is home screen is now completed. I think everything is all right. We have to update the username also. Dot username. Our home screen is also completed with the updated state. Let's check out the view model. And now when this view model is initialized, we have to get all the initial investments that is already added in the in-memory database. So for that one, we have to add the, we have to use get investments use case here. So let's add constructor here and use private val get investments use case, and second one is get transactions use case. All right, and now we have to use, we have to call this use cases here. Function execute function get investments, and this will be in the view model scope, and launch a coroutine in the view model scope, and then use get investments use case dot execute dot, basically the first one is on start. On start we have to update the state so that copy is loading, and we have to change it to true. All right, and then we have to use on completion, change it to false. And now for the last part, collect. We are collecting from the flow the data here. Let's say our investments data flow is here, like so. And now we have to update the state with the investments in this state from this flow. So this will be investments, and now we can use the same function for the transactions also. Change investments to transactions, get transactions use case dot execute, and loading, and then we have to use transactions, change this to transactions. And now we have to use init block to call this function, get transactions, and get this. And the last thing and the most important thing left here is basically we have to wire up all of these things. So basically we have to wire home view model with the in use cases, and then for each use case we have to wire repository. For the repository we have to wire local data source, and see, it's not used because we have not used the dependency injection yet. For this, we will use Hilt, which is a recommended dependency injection library for Android. It helps us provide dependencies like repositories and use case automatically. This makes the code cleaner, testable, and easier to maintain. First, we need to add dependencies. I'll just copy and paste from my another project. It helps me save time. I'll also put this in the link. I'll also put this in the description below so you can copy and paste from there. Let's open up libs version toml. Paste the versions. We need Hilt Android and Hilt Navigation Compose. And then we will add dependencies now, like so. And then we also need one plugin for Dagger Hilt Android, like so. Now for the plugin, we need to go to add plugins in the build Gradle. Add alias for that. And also in the project build Gradle file, add that one here. Let's sync the project now so that this error is gone. It is saying this because we have not added any library in this dependency section. So let's add that libraries in here. Alright, so we will add here, it's Hilt. Let's open in the right split and go back to build Gradle. It is libs Hilt dot Android, and then we have Hilt dot navigation dot compose. Alright, so we need to add a compiler now. So for this one I will use KSP. So in order to use KSP we need to add its dependencies also, it's KSP. So it's a plugin we need to add right here, and for this KSP plugin this should be added in the build Gradle right here, like so. And for the last, like so. And now let's go to build Gradle again, and now we need to add a dependency. The build is successful. As you can see, all the errors are gone now. Alright, we have added the dependencies for the Hilt. So now let's go back to the project, and first of all we have to add a main application class in our application. So let's add a new class here, that is investment app. This should be extended with the application. Import it. So this will have an annotation of Hilt. So this will be annotation of Hilt Android app. And after creating a class, let's add that also in the Android manifest, like so. And now after adding this, we also need to add another thing in the main activity, that is the user interface. So for all the main, or for all the activities fragments, we need to add Android entry point annotation from the Hilt. And for the home view model, we need to add annotation, this is Hilt view model, so that Hilt can create this view model instance. Now let's add dependencies. Add a new class in the DI layer, that is app module, and this will be an object. So this will be a module, and then we have to install it in the singleton component. Now we need to add Now we need to add the dependencies of our project. So first of all, let's find which dependency is the independent one. So local data source, its implementation, it doesn't have any dependent dependencies. So in real uh, uh, so in future when we add the database, it will have a dependency of the DAO. So for now we don't have any dependencies, so let's start with this in-memory data source. All right, so we have to start this with provide local data source. This should return local data source, and this will give us in memory data source class object and return us an abstraction of that local data source. And now we have to annotate it with the provides, and also it's a singleton. It should be initialized once. And then after that, let's see where it is used now. It is used in the investment repository implementation. So let's add it in the dependency module. We can copy and paste here. This should be provide investment repository. So this should be investment repository interface. And then this will be a repository investment repository implementation. And it is requiring one argument, that is one parameter, and that is local data source. So we need to get that data source in here. So that will be local data source, and we have to pass it here. Perfect. And now let's see where our investment repository interface is used. It is used in all the use cases. All right, so let's add that in the di, copy and paste it here down below. Provide the use case. The first one is add investment use case. it will be it will be requiring a repository interface, investment repository, and this will be add investment use case, and in the constructor we have to pass the repository, and we have to also return update the return type, and we have to copy and paste couple of times so that we can update it for the other use cases. Transaction, and this will be the transaction use case, and this will be get investments use case, and this will be get transactions use case. Like so. We have used all of our dependencies right here. All right, so we have wired up all the layers and dependencies, and now let's see in the view model we have used the use cases, and also we have initialized it with the Hilt view model. That's perfect. And now let's see. And now let's build the project. Alright, so error is here waiting for us. Hilt view model annotation class should contain Hilt view model. Alright, so let's go to Hilt view model. Hilt view model annotation should contain but inject constructor. Alright, we have forgotten one thing, that is this should be an injected constructor. Inject, and this should be a constructor. All right, so after we have added this inject constructor, these icons will automatically appear that it is dependent in, it is wired up in the dependency injection graph. Now let's build the project again. Build is successful. Now let's minimize this. All right, so let's take a review what we have built. So when the application is started, sample data will be added, and all of these initial investments will be added, and after that view model is initialized. All right, so we have to update this view model with the Hilt initialization. What we can do is basically Hilt view model is equal to Hilt view model and replace it with home view model, like so. After that, in the home screen, let's check out. All right, we have updated the total investments, and all the other things from the in-memory database. That's good. So this will be returned from get investments use cases, and the data will be populated from there. All right. Let's run this application. Investment should be populated. That's good. So as we can see that investments are now populated, and the my investments is also being updated with 1. This is not being updated because we have not updated the state of these two things. So let's change the dark theme. The application should also convert to the dark theme. That's good. So for now, let's update this with the username as, let's say it is coding reel, and we can update the total investment. This can be when the investments is returned, we can update the number of investments also. What we can do is get the size of that and update this. And then after that, we can also update the total investment, and let's update the run block. In the run block, what we can do is basically call all the investments along with the, let's skip that for now. Let's hard code total investments as 5900.0. As you can see, app is in the is working perfectly in with the dark theme also. And if we switch back to the light theme, it should also be dynamically converted to the light theme. Let's add another investment. uh, let's add another investment as livestock for this. ID2 investment type is investment type dot livestock dot type, and name is dairy farm. And then what we can do is basically we can add two transactions for that. The fourth one is the deposit, and the investment ID is 2. Deposit is 1000. Description is initial investment, and then we have an expense of second invest. Let's say the expense is 100, that expense is 300, and that is in the next one, that is a tax, land tax for example. And this is ID, update the ID for 5. Let's run the application. It should update this. As you can see, the balance is being calculated perfectly, both of that, total investments and here.